Welcome to the Business and Interiors podcast, the place where the world of interior design meets the essence of business success. I'm your host, David Del Greco, alongside my co-host, Cinzia Moretti of the award-winning Moretti Interior Design Studio. Our mission is to help interior designers run, streamline, and grow their business with confidence. In this podcast, we dive into the professional journeys and personal stories of some of the most inspiring interior designers and creative entrepreneurs. Each episode offers a glimpse into the strategies and experiences that have helped shape their business in this ever-evolving industry. So tune in, get inspired, and join us as we uncover the stories behind the design. Welcome back to the podcast. Our guest today is Rose Murray. Rose is the founder and CEO of These White Walls, a multi-award-winning studio renowned for designing boldly elegant interiors and bespoke experiences. Known for their luxury-led and concept-driven approach, Rose and her team transform blank spaces into uniquely crafted interiors that redefine the art of living. Rose, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, absolute pleasure. It's
nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
In this surprising sunny London morning.
It's a shock. It's a shock to see the sun.
Yes.
The spring is here finally. Well, thanks for coming, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Obviously, we have known each other for a while.
Yeah.
And obviously, I know a little bit about your studio, but I know that your background comes from scenography. But tell us, what inspired you to embark on a career in interior design? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think I was very directionless to start off with. I actually didn't study interior design at all. I studied anthropology. So, yeah, sort of a rogue on the scene. And basically went out with wide eyes into the world, not knowing what direction I was going into. I thought I was going to work in editorial, and then I started moving that direction and very quickly started doing set dressing, props, working on cookery books and various things like that, whilst also simultaneously getting involved in event design, set dressing on events, scenography, film, TV commercials, you name it. You name it. I was I was a Jill of all trades, and just basically taking a multidisciplinary approach to uncover what it was I wanted to do. And I did that for several years. I reached to a point when I've been doing that for about 10 years and trying to decipher what direction I was going to go in next. And it was basically a fork in the road. Did I want to go into film or did I want to go into interiors? And so I chose interiors. And yeah, the rest is history, really.
Very good. So you say you didn't study interior design, or did you take some courses after? Obviously, you made that decision. Or?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically a school of life. I think all of the disciplines that I worked in required a certain knowledge. So I was already doing a lot of mood boards, sourcing, using Photoshop, modeling up in SketchUp. It was very, very visual, kind of a lot of the same programs. As I moved into interior design, I then taught myself AutoCAD and all of that, but it was very much learned by osmosis. And yeah, I'm a real believer in that, actually. Yeah.
And from there, how did you find the first client?
So I was freelancing on a number of different projects, and I was doing a lot of concept design, particularly, so going into studios and helping with pitches. And I'd met this client and doing a lot of the early conceptual work for a project, and then it just got sidelined and I moved on and didn't really think much of it until a couple of years later. And I literally just got a phone call completely out of the blue saying, I've got the restaurant, want to go ahead and I want you to design it. What are you up to?
Okay, which restaurant was that?
So that was Hyde.
Okay.
That was Hyde, yes, exactly.
And when was this? So when did you start the studio?
So I set it up in 2017. And that was essentially in response to that as my sort of first own client. And yeah, it very much from there, I realized that this was an opportunity to really showcase what was possible. And I think when you've got a big project like that, I just was like, whatever you want to throw at me, like literally make it as theatrical as possible, product design, furniture design, all of that.
Perfect brief.
Perfect brief, yeah, exactly. And I think being given a great deal of creative freedom on that project was just heavenly. And, I think when you get a rare opportunity like that, you really go for it.
So did that help you then establish that credibility and trust right at the beginning? Because obviously when you start, it's hard to basically, getting clients to start with, but also getting people to believe you that you're good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'd gained a lot of confidence. I knew what I was doing because of my previous career. But I think also you have to have an absolute belief in what you're doing, and an absolute determinism to excel. And I think I really did that. I mean, I probably didn't sleep for like a year and a half, but I loved every moment of it. It was totally passion led. And yeah, I just thought, let's just go bigger, more beautiful. Like I really wanted to experiment with as much as possible. And I think clients and people industry sense that passion. And I think, even years later, people they love it. They're constantly getting in contact with us and saying how much they love the space. So I think that energy is kind of built into the venue itself. And that's why it really touches people.
And what challenge did you face, to start your own business? Because you were doing a different career, so you had to have the transition.
Yeah, it was transition, but also transferable skills. And I think it was actually quite an easy way in because I there was a lightness to me, I guess. I really just was like, I just have to be the vision and make things happen. And because I'd been working with, a lot of fabricators, manufacturers, craftspeople before previously, styling, meant that I had, like a big sort of book of contacts already. It actually was more of an inevitable next step, I would say, that felt completely right.
And as you build that process, because obviously a lot of interior designers, work their life, really nailing that process, to make sure that they streamline their operations. How did you create that process for yourself?
So in building the company,
in building the company, but also, for example, attracting your clients and onboarding the clients, and also implementing the design. That obviously was agreed, on the concept stage or on the contract stage.
Yeah.
So how did you go about that?
I think when you're working in production, whether that's events or TVs, like television, commercials, film, there's very tight deadlines. There's budgets. So you always have to have that in mind. I think having that knowledge was really helpful. And you have to be quite commercially driven when you're working in a hospitality project as well. So that was always front of mind. And there is a balance to be had, because your vision has to be really big. And I always encourage people to go really big on the vision and then pull back on it rather than hold back on the vision. Because I think you're ultimately always going to have to value engineer something, but you don't want to be value engineering back from something that is it's going to end up mediocre. So I think you have to wear many, many hats is the answer to that. I think particularly when you're starting out, you're kind of everything in a business. So it's a good education moving forward. And it's very, very challenging, and it's very different to being a designer as well. Absolutely. And I think that's the difference. You have to really test yourself and say, am I a true entrepreneur? Like, is that the ground I want to run on? And for many people it is, but you have to juggle many things at the beginning of your journey.
And at which point then you hired your first employee? I mean, did you always know that you wanted to grow the studio, or did that happen kind of naturally?
I guess it was quite organic. I basically just brought people on board as and when I needed them. And I was very lucky on that first project to be working with some amazing consultants. Luster Green doing all the architectural design, the kitchen designers, lighting designers. So it was a very big and well-resourced project. As you move on, particularly when you start moving into other realms and with different types of clients, you don't have so much of that. So, but from the start, I brought on an assistant and worked very lightly. And then as you grow and begin to do more projects, you recognize that you need more technical on board, or you need different levels of designer and so forth. So for me, it was organic and demand driven, I would say. And then that expands and contracts, when various things happen, like a global pandemic, and you have to pivot again. I think it's something which is not static, which is why it's so interesting. Yeah. And
during the pandemic, did you had a shift on your business?
Yes. So we were very commercially focused, working in hospitality. In fact, entirely. I don't think I'd done any residential. So yes, when the pandemic hit, we closed our physical studio. Everything went online. And yeah, for me, I started pursuing residential, and it just so happened that we had recently got a residential client. So that was really interesting to shift in that direction. And we've been doing a lot of residential since then, a lot very, very private clients, very interesting projects.
UK based, internationally?
International.
Okay.
Yeah. For a while, I didn't have any UK projects. Everything was international, which has its own challenges, and is amazing. And I think that was actually something which I always knew from the start. I've always loved travel, and I just always knew that I wanted to work internationally, and that just happened. After Hyde, I was like, well, what would I like to do next? I'd love to do a hotel somewhere in Europe. That would be amazing. And then Nordalaya, the Italian hotel project, came up, and that was really beautiful. Then I'm thinking, I'd love to go somewhere completely extreme, different environment like the desert. And then my client from, the Arab Emirates arrived. So, yeah, I think it's good to have in front of mind the type of work you want to do. And then when clients come in, you recognize very quickly that they're aligned and they're the right type of client, and then you start to make magic.
And for some designers that they are still unsure what they want to do, pursue more residential or hospitality, what would you say would be the difference that you find in working both of them?
Oof, I mean, I love both. I think because hospitality is more kind of brand driven. You're thinking about a wider audience and brand values and a very different type of experience. And I think if you like that, if you like working with brands, and particularly if you like the busy environment and quite complex, they can often be quite complicated, and you need to know a lot more about fire regulations and all sorts of things. So it's a very different type of challenge. Other people, I would say, if you like working more one-to-one, it's quite sort of intimate, the relationships that you have with your private residential clients. It's often less... It's a slightly slower process as well. I think there's more time within those to really dig deep into a person and create a more intimate environment. Then there is a contrast. For me, I like both. I like the balance. I like the combination. And
would you say in terms of the design process, you find you follow the same steps, or do you find that the residential is slightly different in terms of stages that you work?
Yes, so I would say in terms of the sort of stages that we work through and the delivery of the program, they all follow the same. It tends to go sort of concept, narrative, schematics, detail design, coordination, implementation, handover, very briefly speaking. I think that's a really interesting one because in the same way as I feel like there is a kind of mergence between commercial and residential, people are spending times in hotels and coming and saying, "Oh, I want my home to feel like this beautiful hotel."
Yeah.
And hotels and public spaces are like, "Oh, well, people want a feeling of intimacy." So the same can be said, I think, for the approach that you take with each of them. And I find that I think with certain commercial projects, I have treated it as something where I'm really trying to understand the intention of the owners, particularly because we work with a lot of independent clients. So I think they mutually inform each other.
You can see workspaces as well nowadays becoming more like homes, right? More homely.
Absolutely. I think it's because we all spend so much time, in our places of work. And also, probably again, post-pandemic, people are questioning, do they need to be in the studio? And, we are very much studio-based. And the feedback that I get from the designers is that they really value that. They like being in a place where they are not just stuck with their own thoughts. They can bounce ideas off each other. There's a space for your material library. It actually enables them to create a separation between work and home, which I think it's very, very difficult to do if you're always in a single space.
Yeah.
Workplaces are are really important, just in terms of well-being and the social values that they give us.
For sure.
Yeah.
What about your design philosophy? Because you have a very specific and I think original design philosophy. How did you develop that?
Very much probably intuitively driven initially. Okay. Like it's always like, well, how does somebody have a sense of taste or style? But in terms of the actual aesthetic, it does vary, but there's definitely a running vein of a kind of bold femininity and a very strong unconventional beauty, I think, in the work that we do. I sort of say, I begin with the question, how do we live more beautifully? I'm not interested in reproducing what is. I'm much more interested in reimagining what's possible. Right. And so it's very question driven. And yeah, I like to play with things and explore. So yeah, I think the pillars remain the same. I very much always look to narrative materials and artistry behind our works. And narrative being really the story that you're telling. Materials, they speak so much of those values, and so that is a really important basis for any project. It is like the canvas that you build upon. And artistry, whether that is literally the art and installations, and we've done a lot of those, or it's the craftsmanship. All of those three are very important pillars in the design. Yeah.
And what kind of questions would you ask your clients when you interview them? And do they come to you because they appreciate obviously your design philosophy and your approach to design?
Yes. I think definitely you have to resonate with your clients. There's this sort of fear that you won't get clients and there's loads of designers, but actually that's great because there are so many different types of client and so many different types of designer, and not every client is for you. And I think it is very important that you're clear on your values, so that you resonate with your client. Otherwise you will come a cropper later on, and you need to understand, or there needs to be a mutual understanding that yes, you both value the art and craft and the authenticity of materials. So yeah, I always prefer to go with an authentic, natural material, but be playful with it and explore what's possible rather than going for an imitation. That comes with associated costs, for example. So all of that you need to sort of, mutually understand. But it's very much about how does that client want to feel in the space, or how do they want the guest experience to feel like? And I think it's very emotionally driven. The design that we create. So I think I spend a lot of time uncovering that with my clients.
Okay. And do they give you carte blanche, or is there some sort of collaboration when creating those interiors or those concepts?
I think it's very collaborative because you always want to hear where they're coming from, and you want that space to have a stamp of their identity on it. But also you want to offer value and go beyond the brief. So I always say to my designers, we want to go beyond the brief and surprise them. So I'm often told, unusually I guess maybe, show us what you got. which is my favorite, which is wonderful. So then you can kind of go wild.
So when you work, for instance, internationally, and you say you want to use all the materials, the beauty of the materials, do you tend to go and research the local materials and explore what they have in the culture, or you prefer what you already know here and then
sort of play safe?
Play safe. I don't really play safe, no. I think for me it's a real opportunity to learn and grow, and I love researching what's available. So I think also it's really important for sites to have a sense of, you hear it sense of place. What does that mean? But I think you want to connect with the locality, both culturally and from an environmental perspective. So I hadn't really done as much work with, marble and inlays as I did when we moved to doing projects in the Middle East, and realised that was a real talent. And so really playing with that and taking stone from that region, from nearby regions, and playing with the different effects that we could, scraping the stone, leathering the stone, polishing the stone, inlaying it became an interesting experiment, really, to create a very new and different expression. But equally, I think when you work internationally and your studio's based in London, clients often come because they like that sort of Britishness, and they often want some of that quirk to come through. So often I'm a big champion of British makers, so we will get things made here and ship them over, so that what you get in the end is a very interesting dialogue between different cultures. And in that sense, it is a really beautiful collaboration.
That's nice. And you were also tasked to redesign the library just after it closed.
Yeah.
And tell us about the challenges that you faced during that process, and potentially also some of the things that you're really proud of.
Yes. So I, probably like many others, read in the newspaper that the library was closing, and I was quite shocked. I think it really hit the hospitality industry very hard, and it just felt like such a shame. And it wasn't long after that I got the email from Nigel and Brett asking, if I would consider redesigning. And I was very excited about that. I've always loved working with chefs. I think they're super creative, and there's a lot of overlap in the process. It basically, the library has been there for 15 years, and Brett is continually evolving himself and his dishes and his menu, and it very much felt that the space did not reflect the art of the man who was occupying it. And so it was a really wonderful journey to go on with him. And we did a lot of food tasting and, looked at all the dishes and the art that he collected, and really getting a strong sense of what that space needed to look like coming out of lockdown, and really reflecting the values of the cuisine that he was creating. So it was a really beautiful, it was a really beautiful journey to go on with him. And we did transform the space, and it's small. It's a very intimate dining space, but it just shows that you can do a lot. And I think we had lots of fun. I mean, he came with these mycelium bowls. So he'd been working with this little studio who were creating these pieces, and he was like, I really want to, he said, I really want to do like a wall or something, but how would we do it with bricks? And that then became this big feature. And we decided to really stretch it and make it into these large panels, and mix it with mirror and glass, so that you were really taking this quite, organic, possibly slightly unglamorous material, and then luxing it up and putting those things side by side to create this quite beautiful installation, which always intrigues people. They sort of think, is it stone? Like, what is it? And when you tell them it's mycelium, it was a sort of, living thing. Yeah. They're very intrigued. And I think a lot of those values came from the fact that Brett's cuisine is surprising as well. Like he loves digging for truffles and mixing these ingredients which have beautiful provenance, but turning them into this sort of art piece that's edible. And that ethos had to absolutely resonate, with the space itself.
I guess it's quite difficult to create an interiors that is both timeless and innovative. You mentioned that obviously Brett is evolving all the time. Yeah. So in a way, you would have the cuisine evolving so much that again you'll have that issue that the cuisine doesn't match with the interiors. Yeah. So how do you create something that can really
remain timeless?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a really good question. I think focusing too much on trends is where you'll get scuppered. I'm interested in trends sort of from a sociological perspective, but I feel very much that I want the spaces to have a timeless elegance to them, and there are particular materials that will always do that. I go back again and again to brass, but playing with it in terms of polishing it, patinating it. And I think there are materials that speak of luxury, and there are details which have something timeless to them. So I think as long as you don't try and do something too trendy, that you actually take a step back even. Like I remember like doing set design and, being told that that a set design has been done really well in a film when you don't notice it. when it feels completely natural.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's sort of not taking the tourists to a too egotistical place, allowing them to be the theatre for whatever it is that is being served up is an important part of it.
How do you find your inspiration?
Ooh, inspiration. Yeah, I mean, definitely life offline, always. I, again, travel, just immersing yourself in something outside of your ordinary pattern. Poetry. I read a lot of poetry. I find that really inspiring. And then also just materials themselves. Yeah, like constantly being inspired by materials, and that really, you sort of raise a lot of question. What could I do differently with this? I think is a good way of remaining inspired, but also just be interested in people, like remaining curious. I think is a really important part of that. Like asking questions. That can be very inspiring if you feel stuck.
Can you share an example of, how you applied some of the things that you potentially seen in your travels or in poetry or something from the people that you met along your way into your interiors?
Into our interiors. So, for example, one of the projects we're working for a private residential client, we created a sort of 10 metre by 2 metre bespoke chandelier with sort of undulations of these sort of glass flutes that are nano-coated in brass. And that actually was inspired by when I first arrived on the site. It was incredibly windy, and there was just hot sand blowing around everywhere. And I think because it was such a new environment, I was very much aware of how the landscape was formed, by the winds, essentially. And there was a lovely interaction with that. And I wanted to kind of make a statement in the center of the space, as an ode to that, I would say. And it just came out of sketches and evolved from there, really.
Amazing.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And do you create quite a lot of bespoke furniture or furnishings yourself as well?
Yes, we're very much bespoke. We will do anything. We've done, tables, chairs, light fittings, you name it. Absolutely. So I think that's what I love to do. And yeah, we tend to work closely with our makers and with our clients to create something that is very bespoke and unique to them. And yeah, it's what I love. And I knew I always wanted to do that as well.
Cool. And have you ever thought about launching a collection, your own collection?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Funny you say that. It's been in my mind for years, and everyone keeps saying it. And it's something we are finally getting around to looking at doing. So, it's one of those watch this space, but it takes time, but we're
for sure.
Yeah, I think this year I've managed to sort of get the head above water and look around a little bit. And it's one of the things that I definitely like to do because we already do it. So why not make that accessible? So definitely that's something I'm interested in.
And anything else we should expect? So what is next for you?
What is next? I mean, who knows? It's very exciting. I think we'll continue to do the balance and of the hospitality and the private, whereas we were doing a lot of private. Currently, I like the balance of the two. And I think, dare I say it, AI is definitely going to have an impact on all of us. And I think it's being a little bit playful with that as a different medium. Which I'm looking forward to doing. And
How do you use that right now?
Oh, actually only in a really basic way. I think, but I'm very interested.
What do you use?
So, for example, you can play a lot with ChatGPT just for sourcing or searching for things. We've only literally just started looking at Midjourney.
Okay.
Because we've always used visualizers, but it's quite helpful to play with ideas. But there's a plethora. I feel like you could teach me.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's really keen into that.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a ton, but it's actually a whole big thing that I'm looking to develop around AI. Which is really interesting.
I think you can really streamline. Again, that's probably why I'm so keen, because you can really streamline a lot of your processes and operations, and you can get addicted as well.
I think so. Yeah, and I think also there's quite a lot of fear around it. I think in the industry because it can create these sort of quite seductive visuals very quickly. But the thing about it is you really need to train AI. It's creating unrealistic concepts, and that's perfect, for ideation. But in terms of implementing that, you're going to get into trouble. So you really, really need the design know-how and the knowledge from, yourselves, from the architects, from the structural engineers, from the fabricators and manufacturers to actually make that happen. Yeah. And so I think there's no need to be afraid. I think it's going to be a collaborative effort with AI to generate new ideas.
I mean, even with the prompts, the results will always be different because everyone will have a different prompt, a different, let's say, information that they will feed to AI. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people, there is the fear that, the machines are taking over. But I think there was a really good quote saying AI will not replace interior designers. It will replace interior designers that don't use AI.
No, exactly. Get with the program. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it could be a wonderful tool. It is a wonderful tool. Yeah. And I think as long as you use that to generate new ideas and don't shy away from it because it's an inevitability, then I think we're entering a really fun era, and it will change the aesthetics that we're used to, and that's not a bad thing. Often I think with sort of a lot of image proliferation platforms where we're all using the same thing, you can find a lot of repeat motifs and styles, which can be a bit bland. And I'm sort of always sort of fighting against that. So I think this is a really good opportunity, kind of slightly blow it out the water. Yeah,
be more creative and be more
I think as creatives, it's very exciting. The possibilities are exponential.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And apart from poetry, any other hobby and interest?
Oh, gosh. All sorts. I mean, I got really into cold water swimming, sea swimming.
Wow.
Wig, down in Brighton. So, I really enjoy that. Anything outdoors, but that's definitely one of them. Cold water immersion was...
You're taking the ice baths to the next level.
A February dip in the south of England is, definitely enough to give you a good good rush. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I'm the opposite. I need the whole water.
Not gonna do it. Yeah.
It was quite funny because I was in Bristol last weekend, and there was a sign saying the water looks is much colder than you think.
Yeah. I got a real shock. I mean, I got myself like boots and gloves, but the first time I went in, it was brutal. It was brutal, and you have to. Yeah, you really have to hold yourself together. But it's an amazing feeling afterwards. So and also Irish blood. So Irish blood. That my grandmother would be like, "You're not having an ice cream until you get in the water." We were young kids, so you'd be there cramping. But so I'm kind of used to it. I enjoy it. Yeah,
that's good. Amazing. I wanted to ask you about a piece of advice that you received that really influence your in a good way your professional growth and your business?
I mean, I think just always sticking with your values and having integrity is just a really good compass to move by, actually. Like you know in your gut when something feels right and when it doesn't, and I think trust your intuition is a really important part of it. Like if you sense that something doesn't quite feel right or is something slipping, you're probably right on that, and you should investigate that because it'll prevent much bigger problems. And also, communication. Like just don't be afraid of communicating, with your clients and talking about challenges, because ultimately you need to remember that you're both there for the same goal, which is to make an absolutely amazing project. So with that in mind, you can always overcome the challenges that you face.
So being open no matter what, basically.
Sorry?
Being open no matter what.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah.
And this is the same advice you will give to someone who started a business now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you've got to be comfortable with what you're doing. Don't be afraid to slightly push the limits, but also know your capabilities. That's a really important one. And make sure that you're doing what you enjoy, because you're going to be doing it a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Don't do it because you should. Yeah.
And is there like an advice that it's gets repeated quite a lot in the industry that you strongly disagree with?
Oh.
Controversial now.
Ooh.
That's a good one.
I think don't get too caught up in trends, because I think you'll just end up repeating what's already out there. Because there's so, I would say things, Pinterest boards, super accessible. And we didn't used to get them years and years ago. And now you get presented with a Pinterest board. And it's like, can you just recreate that? So I would just really sort of question that and, be true to yourself.
Okay.
And also be true to what the client's looking for, because often they're showing you something they think they want, but it's actually not what they want.
You have to read between the lines.
Read between the lines. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So going back to trends, it's just understanding what's trending right now,
Yeah.
but then do your own thing, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with trends. I sound like I'm bad mouthing though. No. I mean, they are reflective of where society is and society's needs. So they're actually a really important thing to be aware of. Absolutely, and they can teach you a lot. But in terms of the aesthetics of that will pass. And I think that's mainly what I sort of mean is, this year's colour, this particular form. Allow yourself to play with it, but buildings last a fairly long time, so you have to be aware of that. And equally, many clients like to do refurbishment, and they are aware that they will change it in a few years' time. So, for example, we're working with a lovely family, and they've got daughters, some of whom are pre-teenage, some are teenagers. By the time everything gets built, they will have gone through, a lot personally, and their likes and dislikes will change. So you have to then be aware that that room has to have an inbuilt sort of future-proofing in terms of, right, we're going to remove the wallpapers, we're going to repaint, but most of it will stand the test of time. But you want to allow them to express their personality. I think all of that, allowing for that flexibility.
So do normally clients come to you and say, oh, I do like, something which is potentially current, trendy right now, and then you kind of persuade them or educate them, like you said, so that, they have they're aware of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And also what their life will be in.
Definitely.
Going forward.
Yeah, I think you need to be aware that your clients are always in a transition, and what you're creating is you don't want it to feel too static and resonant of a particular time. Like you do need to think ahead for them. And again, if they show you something from the present they really like, that's great. That's a really good starting point. But what else?
Okay.
And also, is that really practical for them? Does it suit the sort of functions that they want? And or actually, is it something else about that they like? Sometimes it's just the color, so they can show you an image, and it's like actually, it's just the feeling of coziness or grandeur that you're after. It's not actually those particular forms or those particular pieces of furniture.
Because most of the time they don't know how to express what they really have in their mind. It's like, okay, that's similar.
Yeah.
So let's start at that, and they show you the picture.
Yeah.
But maybe in their mind they're thinking,
it's kind of that,
it's
but
kind
it's
of that,
not.
but it's not that. How do I explain that?
Exactly.
So,
I think we're very sort of fluid. Like as designers, you can jump to the vision of something very quickly, and you're often used to talking about it. For a lot of clients, is like, well, I know. I kind of know what I want. I know what I don't like.
Yeah.
I know what I like, but I don't think I want that either. They really, it's difficult for them. And that's the value in having a designer. I mean, like I say, there's so much available now that people could do up their own space. So what is the value that you bring? And I think it's being able to really help somebody see what it is that they really want, that is unique to them. And to create an aesthetic built around that, so that they feel like this is something really special that complements them and their life. That's the added value that you're bringing. Yeah.
That's true.
And how did you develop that? How did you develop, reading the client and understanding their lifestyle, or understanding or try to understand what they want, what they don't know themselves?
I think it's being an outside party. People can often, you see you better than you can see yourselves. I think that's one thing. Also being an empath. I think that's just the nature of my personality. I'm very interested in people, and again, it comes back to the curiosity, that aspect. I'm kind of, it's a service essentially that you're providing. So how are you serving them? Yeah. And I think as long as you keep remembering that, it's difficult to go wrong, really, unless you take things away, and then you kind of work in your own little silo and then bring them back out again. That's a real hit and miss. And I've done both, and I think luckily I've managed to sense enough to be able to surprise a client, because sometimes they just like to be surprised. But yeah, I think that's it. Just kind of care about your client and care about the project, and you can't really go wrong.
And because you seem so interested in curiosity as well, and nature, outdoor, how do you keep your team interested as well?
Yeah, I think that's the joy of being in a studio and having those conversations, and they're all different personalities. And I think that, and from different places, Spain, Italy, China, Moldova, we've got a whole range of different people in our studio, and that brings a wonderful cross-cultural approach to it anyway. But I think that's part of my role as CEO, and is directing your team when they can get sort of stuck in a rut or they're not really sure. Is like you're there to slightly prod them and ask different questions. And I think that's the important part of my job role, I would say. Yeah.
Do they get involved when you're interviewing clients in that phase where you are trying to obviously to uncover obviously the brief and
the desires and the brief? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I bring them in early on. Like I like having the designers around. I tend to get them into meetings. Bring them to site. Like that's really, really important. So we all travelled out to Spain the other week, and I want them to be as involved as possible. It's not about locking them chaining them to a desk and saying get on with it. There's the joy of the job is that it's so varied, and you are away from the desk, you are in workshops, you are out at meetings. Some designers don't really want to do that. They just want to be left alone. So, it's about sensing the individuals in your team. Not everyone wants to do that all the time. And actually it can be preventative for some people getting their work done. And then that causes them stress. So I think you have to, be interested in the people in your studio as well, and how they want to work and how they work best, and how to optimize that. But yeah, I think they get a lot from the process.
Very good. Last question. Is there a dream project that you would like to work on?
Oh, goodness me, a dream project. Oh, I'd like to do something on an island, something. So if anyone's got an island that they want me to do a retreat on, I'd probably quite happy.
You mean an island?
Oh, not well. Or an island, yeah, equally. Like like a desert island or something.
So in a hot place? Or?
Yeah, probably. Like I could definitely do.
Or a cold place because you.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, I could. Yeah, somewhere.
A tropical island. Let's be specific.
Let's be specific. Let's really manifest this. So yeah, sort of a tropical private island, but potentially with an ecological aspect. I think that would be really lovely. So yeah, I'm up for that if you want to bring that my way.
Oh, okay. We wish that for you.
Thank you.
And obviously we want to be invited when the
so you'll come to the opening party. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Rose. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed our conversation, feel free to share it with your friends. And if you wish to dive deeper into the business of interior design, we invite you to join our membership community at businessandinteriors.com. Until next time.